You shrink before you speak. You have done it so many times that you no longer notice it. You are in a meeting or at dinner or standing in your own kitchen, and something rises in you. A thought, an opinion, a need, and then almost instantly, something else rises faster. A calculation, who is in the room, what they will think, whether it is worth it. And by the time that calculation finishes, the moment is gone. You swallowed it. Again, what is strange is not that it happened. What is strange is that it felt like a choice. It felt like maturity, like wisdom, like keeping the peace. But you were not keeping the peace. You were keeping yourself small. And you have been doing it for so long that you built a philosophy around it. There is someone who understood this more deeply than anyone. His name was Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche was a 19th century German philosopher who watched the people around him celebrate humility, self-sacrifice, and restraint as the highest virtues. He saw something else in those virtues. He saw fear wearing a moral disguise. Nietzsche called it the morality of the herd, the quiet pressure that turns vital, capable people into apologists for their own existence. He believed that the most dangerous thing done to a person is not cruelty. It is the slow training of a person to call their own diminishment a virtue. In this video, we will look at 5 signs you have been conditioned to make yourself smaller. Stay until the end. Sign number 4 is the one most people never talk about because it is the one that looks the most like strength. The first sign is called the apology reflex. You walk into a room and apologize for taking up space. You send a message and add "sorry to bother you" when you are not sorry and you are not bothering anyone. You preface every strong opinion with "I could be wrong, but..." You have made a ritual out of shrinking before anyone even asks you to. Here is what is really happening beneath that reflex. You learned somewhere early that taking up space without permission was dangerous. Not physically dangerous. Socially dangerous. You learned that your full presence created friction, and friction created consequences. So you developed a habit of preemptive retreat. You apologize before the attack arrives. The apology is armor. Nietzsche had a name for this pattern. He called it the slave's first movement, the instinct to make oneself smaller in the presence of the powerful. He did not mean slavery literally. He meant the psychological posture of someone who has internalized their own subordination so completely that they perform it automatically without being asked. The reflex was trained into you. That does not mean you are required to carry it forever. The second sign is called borrowed ambition. Your goals do not quite feel like yours. The career you are building, the life you are arranging, the version of success you are working toward. When you examine it closely, you can trace almost all of it back to someone else's voice. A parent, a teacher, a culture that told you what a good outcome looks like. You pursued it anyway because it felt safer than inventing something from scratch. What is happening beneath borrowed ambition is a specific kind of fear. The fear of being wrong about yourself. If you adopt someone else's vision for your life, and it fails, the failure belongs to the vision. If you create your own, and it fails, the failure belongs to you. Borrowed ambition is a hedge. It keeps you moving without ever requiring you to commit to who you actually are. Nietzsche believed this was one of the most common forms of self-betrayal. He wrote that most people never live their own lives. They live the expectations that accumulated around them before they were old enough to choose. He called this the ultimate form of cowardice, not the failure to act, but the failure to want the right things. The question is not whether you are working hard. The question is whether you are working towards something you chose. The third sign is called strategic smallness. You are more capable than you let on. In certain rooms with certain people, you make yourself easier to be around by dimming what you know. You ask questions you already know the answers to. You let someone explain something you understood before they started. You laugh at the right moments and disappear at the others. You have learned that competence threatens, and you have made peace with hiding yours. The psychology here is sophisticated. This is not insecurity. This is management. You have correctly identified that some relationships cannot hold your full capacity. That some people around you are more comfortable when you are slightly below them. So you manage the relationship by managing your own visibility. You control the ceiling. Nietzsche saw this behavior in the most talented people around him, and he was not sympathetic. He believed that concealing your power to make others comfortable was not kindness. It was a transaction. You were trading your vitality for their approval and calling it consideration. Being easy to be around is not the same thing as being good. Do not confuse the two. The fourth sign is called the wound you defend. This is the one nobody talks about. This is the sign that looks most like loyalty, most like love, most like moral character. You have someone in your life. Maybe you have had several, and they have treated you in ways that required you to minimize yourself, to be quieter, smaller, less demanding, less present. And instead of naming that, you defended them. You explained their behavior to others. You made excuses in public that you were not fully making in private. And then, when the moment came, the person you had defended in front of everyone was the first one to use your vulnerability against you. What is happening here is the deepest form of conditioned smallness. You have learned to protect the dynamic that diminishes you, because leaving it would require admitting what it cost, because defending the person who limits you feels like proof that you are not the problem, and because somewhere you have confused tolerance with love. Nietzsche was not a gentle philosopher on this point. He believed that resentment, what he called ressentiment, was the primary emotion of people who had been diminished and refused to acknowledge it. The wound that you defend is not generosity. It is ressentiment in a moral costume. The most painful thing to lose is not a person. It is the story you built around surviving them. The fifth sign is called the permission habit. You wait. Before you move, before you speak, before you decide, you wait for a signal that it is acceptable. You frame your wants as questions. You make your needs sound negotiable. You present your decisions as suggestions and then defer when someone pushes back, even when you know they are wrong. You have become so good at waiting for permission that you have forgotten you are allowed to stop waiting. The permission habit is one of the most invisible forms of self-suppression because it mimics conscientiousness. It looks like collaboration. It looks like humility. But beneath it is a belief that your judgment alone is not sufficient, that your choices require external ratification to become real, that you are, in some essential way, always pending approval. Nietzsche believed that the greatest human tragedy was not suffering. It was the person who had the capacity to live fully and spent that life waiting for someone to tell them it was allowed. He called this the failure to become what you are. And he meant it not as an insult, but as a diagnosis. No one is going to give you permission. That is not how it works. It has never been how it works. Now pull back. Look at all 5 of these together. What do you see? Not weakness, not failure. You see a person who learned in real time, under real conditions, how to survive an environment that did not fully welcome them as they were. The shrinking was rational. The apologies were protective. The borrowed goals and hidden competence and defended wounds and endless waiting. All of it made sense at the time. All of it worked. The problem is not that you learned it. The problem is that you kept doing it after you were safe. You took the survival strategy out of the original context and carried it into every room, every relationship, every decision. You are still protecting yourself from a threat that is no longer there. Nietzsche would say you are not broken. You are overdue. 1. Stop pre-apologizing for your presence. The apology does not protect you. It trains others to expect it. 2. Audit your ambitions. Remove the ones you inherited and replace them with nothing for a while. Wait and see what grows on its own. 3. Stop managing your ceiling. Let people see what you are capable of, and let the ones who cannot hold it leave. 4. Name what the defended wound cost you, not to the person who caused it, to yourself, loudly and without mercy. 5. Move without permission. Make the decision. Send the message. Take up the space. Do it before the calculation finishes. Go back to the moment at the beginning. You in the room, swallowing something. A thought, a need, a version of yourself. Here is what Nietzsche understood that most people do not. That moment of swallowing is not neutral. Every time you do it, you are not keeping the peace. You are teaching yourself that your inner life is negotiable. That who you are is something to be managed and adjusted depending on who is watching. You were not born small. You were trained to be convenient. The question is not whether you can stop shrinking. The question is whether you are willing to become inconvenient. If this reached something real in you, share it with one person who needs to hear it. That is the only ask.